Ready? Yes, sir. All right, let's get going. Good evening. Today is July 15, 2009. It is 5:35 p.m. This is a regular board meeting of the Brownsville Navigation District. I hereby call this meeting to order. Vicky, would you lead us in a prayer?
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and may you bless each and every one this evening. We ask for your guidance on the decisions made today on our agenda. May your peace keep us all calm, collected, and in unity. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Item 2, public audience. No one has signed up. Item number 3, receive Port Director's report. Item A, update on port security project.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, members of the audience, very quickly. Got 3 things today. 1 is just a report on port security projects. 2, an update on the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the Tiger grants. And 3, just to, since it's the second meeting of the month, to go over the monthly operations report. The first item, I'm going to ask Mr. Ed Clark, who is a consultant on the team. You will recall Mr. Clark briefed everybody on the vulnerability threat assessment. In this particular case, I'm going to touch on some items. One of them is just the update on the exercises that's coming, and also the public awareness campaign, and we have one other. So with that, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, good to see you all again, sir. This is just an information paper, and I'm going to take just a few short minutes to go over some of the highlights. As the director said, and as we briefed at the last meeting, we outbriefed you on the threat assessment. That was well received by the law enforcement and intelligence communities. We've had requests, to have access to that document from Texas DPS, the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, and we've established a program to ensure that we maintain proper control of that, and that only the right people get access to that. But the feedback that we've received so far is very good. The FBI and Texas DPS we're very impressed with that product. Mm-hmm. Next on the list, you'll see there is the community outreach program. We started to develop some initial products, but one of the challenges that the national level Coast Guard program has is that they have a one-size-fits-all. We're currently adapting some of those programs to better meet the culture that's down here in the Brownsville Navigation District, as opposed to something that the Coast Guard feels is good across the nation. We're also coordinating with different intelligence organizations down here as far as what type of information they would like the citizens to be on the lookout for. And we've also recently just talked to Texas DPS. They have volunteered to use their resources to receive the phone calls. If citizens do see some type of suspicious activity, that they'll call the Texas DPS Intelligence Fusion Center instead of someplace in Washington, D.C. That'll help us get, in the event there is some type of response required, that would allow us to respond much more quickly, as well as put the intelligence from these phone calls into the right people's hands. Lastly, you'll see there in the last, the third paragraph is information about the national level exercise. As the port leadership as well as the port security staff, as they'll be involved in that, I can't really, in a public domain, go over too many of the details. It kind of tips our hand, but our staff has gone to the Coast Guard in Corpus Christi. We received the training that all the evaluators and the controllers received to serve as controllers and evaluators for that exercise. And we have coordinated our training objectives. We have some that most of them go hand in hand with the national level exercise. We do have some site-specific training objectives that we'll have to control very tightly here, that make sure that those events don't get into play at the national level, because it'll upset some of their training objectives. So we have a plan to control that. Then we'll also have some operational events actually going on here at the port, to where the security staff will actually be tasked to go out and exercise different portions of the facility security plan. If you have any questions, my contact information is there. I'd be glad to give me a call or drop me an email, and I'll be glad to get right back with you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Next, briefly, just an update on the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, the Tiger grants. Please take one of these and pass it down. I'm passing out a couple of things and just kind of give you a status on where we are on our proposed grant application. That is a white paper that was prepared. The reason I'm passing that out is probably that's the best piece of information that we have seen that, summarizes the grant process. There are a couple of things that I'd like to point out to you. We are going to be applying for a grant that's going to fall in the $20 to $100 million range. In that respect, when you look at that, we're going to have to meet certain thresholds. And one of the big thresholds we're going to have to meet on page 2 is we're going to have to make a case for all those long-term outcomes. So we still have intentions of proceeding with it. We're looking at a total project at about $60 million. During Ariel's presentation on the monthly report, we're going to show you the projects. We've added one feature to the dock projects, and that is the BRG North Yard, to introduce the intermodal element of rail direct transport. So we're still proceeding on that basis. That's kind of all we've been doing, to be honest with you, spending a lot of time on this. And one of the reasons why, if you'll take one of these and pass it out, is that we've decided to go the parallel routes with using TxDOT, as well as applying directly to the Department of Transportation. And TxDOT is attempting to put together a process where they want Texas to maximize getting the maximum amount of money under this, and so they're putting together an effort to attempt to look at regional projects and make some recommendations. And so unfortunately that's a real fast timeline, and we've got to get our summary form. If you'll see, there's an attachment there that is the summary and the form information. We need to get that in tomorrow, and we intend to be able to do that. I think there's still a lot out there on how all of this is going to work. One thing is for certain, it's going to be extremely competitive. It's going to be, there's going to be far more requests, and the $1.5 billion is going to be able to be out there nationwide. And so I do believe we need to put our best foot forward. This may represent the only opportunity we've ever had to go after these kind of dollars. So one of the things I will tell you is that we have been working with HDR on the engineering side, but we've also been talking to them on the grant side. I do believe we're going to need some help putting these grant applications together. We will be meeting in Houston. In fact, we'll be meeting at Mr. DeLay's office next week. Ariel and I will be going up there. We're going to be working with the team, and we're going to try to refine all of the elements and the scopes and what is necessary to be able to put together a very competitive application. So at this time, I don't really know where we will need help. But there's going to be some work need to be done in trying to justify the numbers in terms of job creation, long-term sustainability, impact in the community, all of those things. So after next week, I'll have a better idea of the kind of help that we may need and conceivably what kind of assistance we can contract for, if that's going to be the route we decide to go. On the 29th, we'll be in Corpus to kind of go over where we are on the status of the projects that we're currently working on design on. That's primarily Dock 16 and Dock number 6. So we are moving forward. The actual application to the Department of Transportation is not due till the 15th of September. So the application will be far, far more extensive than what you will see on that summary form. But at least we'll give you the basics of where we're headed with this thing. The information that we have to date is that these projects have to be ready to go. and we're looking at start date around March of next year. The decisions on the awards of these grants will be made about the middle of February of next year. It does make a case for doing projects that will be completed by February 2012. We think that we can put together a program that certainly would provide for completion of all of our projects by the end of 2011, December 2011. So kind of gives you where we're headed with this. But we are on track. We intend to certainly go after those funds. They're also maybe trying to work with some of the other area entities who are going to be submitting grant applications, not necessarily lumping all the projects together, but showing how they link. For example, Cameron County may be submitting an application that will look for funding for East Loop or the 550, and will we not be doing it together? We'll still be trying to demonstrate some way of showing how all of these projects are tied together. So we're going to put our best foot forward, and we're proceeding on that basis. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have in that regard. And just one last thing. You may have seen this. It's not on my agenda, but I'm going to pass it out anyway. Port to Port International announced, you saw the release on the liner service between Port of Brownsville and Progreso, Yucatan, with the plans to go on into Central America. They're looking at starting sometime next month with expansion to Central America, hopefully sometime in the fall, early winter. So this is a good deal for us. Again, it's geared towards container service, and so we've got our work cut out for us. But you know, this is the good kind of effort that we need to put forward. We'll probably do a very soft launch when this is done, and then once it gets going, is do the more bigger media event, much like we did with Seabridge. And Seabridge is also looking good, and I'm convinced if we hadn't gotten Seabridge, we probably wouldn't be doing this either. So just wanted to let you know. Last item on the agenda is the monthly operations report, and with that I'll call on Debbie to do the financial and some of the statistical info first.
Okay. In May, this is the May financials, and we're still running ahead of 2008, and when we look at that, January and February of 2009 were significantly ahead of 2008 because of the shoaling issues that we had in 2008. Our months of March, April, and May are slipping compared to 2008, and I think in a couple more months we're going to fall behind last year's continue on this trend. Our expenses, we're holding the line on our expenses down, and so we're doing well against budget and doing well against last year. Still, even though our revenue slipped a little bit, we're slipping basically in the vessel traffic. Our revenues in our leasing areas are maintaining steady. VRG is having a little bit more of a significant impact. Their core counts are way off, and until that comes back, they're going to be struggling more than we are. Cargo stats, again, they're down from last year. We're about 600,000 off the first 6 months of the year. So it's something we're watching very closely. Overweight sales are a little bit down, but they're still going steady, and our tax collections have not been impacted yet. We're at 92% of our collections, so we're doing that's still coming in. Our cash is another area that we're looking at very closely. Our operating banks have been running right at $5 billion. We're down to about 3.3. We made 3 very large payments in the last period. One was Texon. We paid a large bill to the SecOps, and we also paid money to the Corps of Engineers. Those 2 payments are about $1.5 million out of our operating cash. That's about the difference. So those are holding steady. Corpor's doing okay. And do you have any questions?
Any questions? Anybody?
I have a comment. I would like to commend Eddie and staff, our director of staff, our marketing staff, on getting this container business started and going, because it's something that, we've to make the transition into the next era where the port needs to go. And they're baby steps, but, they haven't let up for a minute. They've got shoulder to the wheel and pushing real hard, and I just wanted you to know that we appreciate that.
It's been a real team effort, not least of which is many of the port tenants and, those that make their living off the port have been a big help in this as well. So, but I will make a comment to that. If you look at the commodity mix, you can see the traditionals are there. We're actually, I think, doing a pretty good job of diversifying our mix. Now what we've got to do is get those volumes up so we're just not all our eggs in one basket. But you can see that our petroleum and coal and the minerals have kind of stayed steady where it's the bulk commodity. I mean, it's that steel. So if we can work to build those volumes of that other diverse base that we're working on, that'll make us all better. And so when this stuff comes back, it's going to be gravy train. So
I guess my question is geared to you, Eddie, and that is we're receiving half the vessels we did last year, and of course steel is almost non-existent. I took a tour of the port this evening prior to the meeting with Commissioner Lopez, and I don't think I've seen the patios that empty since the 80s. And so I just hope that you are watching the expenses very, very close, from everything from purchasing supplies to travel, et cetera, because it's going to just keep getting tougher for a while. And I think everybody knows that. I just want to make sure that the staff are doing everything they can to cut back on expenses.
If you look at the balance sheet, one of the areas where we're making headway is where we should be with budget on expenses and where we currently are. I will tell you that we just finished our 6 months, June, so we're going to be scrubbing the budget for the next 6 months. So we'll be coming back with you with some changes that no doubt take into account what's going on with the economic climate. But I will tell you that that's been a big part of why we are reflected on our current balance sheet. So your comments aren't lost on staff.
And those positions that you had that you had budgeted for but didn't fill, we're going to wait until midterm to look at to see where we were. I think was a very wise decision.
We moved with some, and obviously there's others that we didn't fill, and those are reflected in here as well. We haven't filled all of the positions that were authorized, and likelihood is that for the rest of the year that's going to be it. What we did is as far as we're going to go. But we do need to take a look at and make some adjustments between now and the end of the year, because we're hoping that towards the end of the year it'll pick up. But yeah, it's slow. I mean, you can see it out there.
Thank you.
Very good.
The last thing is more on the operational side. Ariel, there's your chance to shine.
I'm gonna go with this one.
Okay.
Here we go.
Oh, wait, he's moved on to mammals now.
I always remember KBOR, they had the little birdie on the windowsill every morning. Everybody wanted to kill.
Okay. Here we go. Mr. Chairman, Board Commissioners, this is basically the operations report. We have many projects ongoing, we're developing some patios and preparing to do the crossing across patio road number 11, Dock 11 Road. We did some improvements on the north side, but in the interest of brevity, we're going to show you just the major projects that we're working on in the port in the last basically the last month or a couple of months. The first one that I want to share with you today, we have an item 11 on your agenda this evening is the award of this contract, the Fishing Harbor Roads project. As you know, the Fishing Harbor requires some upgrades of the roads. Those are the roads that we're working on. The projected funding that we had was an estimate of $610,000 for construction work by the engineer L&G. On Monday, July 13th, we received bids. The first bid was Jimmy Clauser & Sons Construction in $523,508.80. The low bid was BND Paving of $424,361.58, which of course gives us a savings of $185,000 from the projected cost of the engineer's estimate. And the funding that's allocated for this project is a little bit over $700,000 because we had some additional engineering and other things. So obviously here we, this is something that's going to result in a positive impact in our budget. The other project that we have are the internal roads project that we're, as you know, working very closely with the Texas Department of Transportation. This project, of course, you've seen these maps before. This is actually an update because we had an additional a portion there that is not part of the project. This is the attachment to the revised advanced funding agreement that we did with the Highway Department. If you remember, a couple of meetings ago, we basically presented to you the required funding for the project, which included the engineering, the preliminary, the construction cost, and construction management by TxDOT for a $5.5 million project estimate. With that total project cost, there's a federal share of $2.9 million, almost $3 million, that has already been allocated, that is in the hands of the State Department of Transportation. In the advanced funding agreement, this tabulation here that you see is basically a summary of the advanced funding agreement as recently approved. If you remember, they wanted us to advance them at $2.2 million. We submitted a request for them to allow us to do it in 4 different payments. That advanced funding agreement was approved and has been signed. And basically, this is the breakdown. The first payment was delivered to the Highway Department a couple of weeks ago in the amount of $570,615. The scheduled date for letting of this contract is August 13th. I'm hoping that takes place. We have some meetings tomorrow with the utilities people to try to make sure that all the utility coordination is done and it doesn't affect the time frame for letting. Of course, 120 days or 3 months after that, we have to advance the next amounts and so on. As we discussed earlier, after the contract is done and they go over all the amounts, they're gonna more than likely refund us some money because these numbers were on the very conservative side. So that's where we are with the port roads. The other project, as Mr. Campirano mentioned earlier, was the ARRA grant project. I forget what Tiger is. It's Transportation Initiative. I can't remember, but I tried to memorize it, but I apologize for that. But anyway, there is obviously a meaning for that. And what we did is we presented this to the Metropolitan Planning Organization last week, in fact. Mr. Campirano made this presentation to them, showing them basically where our current overweight corridor is, and then showing them where our future 550 is here, and then the proposed East Loop, as we have been discussing it right now with the Cameron County Regional Mobility Authority. In conjunction with the East Loop, the projects that we're working on for the ARRA grants tie into the system in this fashion. Over on the East Loop, of course, we have the tie-in to cargo dock number 16, which is this one right here. On the north side, we have a tie-in of the 550 with the future all dock number 6. And as Mr. Campirano informed you a few minutes ago also, we have added the north rail yard by the Brownsville and Rio Grande Railroad that they're projecting in exactly that location as part of the project. Now, instead of having 2 or 3 different projects, what we're going to be doing is submitting a single project to the U.S. Department of Transportation for this. One of the things that, as Mr. Campirano indicated, these grants are very competitive. They have $1.5 billion available, but they expect about $30 billion in applications. So it's 20 times as much as what they have available that they're expecting to receive applications for. Of course, the projects that you already saw is the proposed oil dock number 6 across from dock 15, next to oil dock number 3. The other one is cargo dock number 16, which is next to cargo dock 15 that you already see. And then here's a little bit of a detail on where we are with the BRG. This is Highway 48. This is the Esco Marine lease area. This is Kepelanfos right here. This is the existing track for BRG. And here's where the proposed rail yard is going. At this time, BRG already has designs for the first 2 of those rails. And basically what we have is package these in a single project with an estimated cost of $55 to $60 million, and that's how it's going to be submitted to the U.S. Department of Transportation. Now, tomorrow we submit the brief to the Texas Highway Department for their evaluation, their review, and hopefully inclusion into their projects. We are really, really confident about these because, this is very, very multimodal. We're involving rail, we're involving roads, we're involving all different modes of transportation. So, that's also something that weighs heavily on the selection criteria. So we're very, very optimistic. And of course, as Vicky said in the prayer initially, we're putting it in the Lord's hands as well. So. And that's it. Now, today I don't have a bird.
I don't even want to ask what that thing's doing.
But thank you very much. If there's any questions,
It's getting ready to take off.
Does that ground squirrel mean we're going to have 3 more months of summer?
he's going to steal his mouse. Eddie's the one that's more versed on the
Local flora and fauna.
On the fauna.
Okay.
So, any questions?
I'll let you do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, I'll get
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Campero.
Item number 4, consideration and action on the following consent agenda items. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of July 1st, 2009. Item B, approval of the following leases. Item 1, Marine Railway LLC new lease.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lopez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Reed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries.
Item number 5, HDR Shiner
Let's, let me go ahead and skip to item number 7.
Okay. Alrighty. Item number 7, consideration and action of resolution by the Brownsville Navigation District Board of Commissioners supporting Going Green initiatives at the Port of Brownsville.
Mr. Campirano.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is an item that we've been discussing about. We had it on the agenda for comment in the meeting of June 1st, June 17th, I should say, and then you wanted us to go back among staff and kind of talk about some of the things that this resolution would imply and some of the things that, and how it would affect the port. I guess the biggest thing, it was everybody's consensus, is that this is something the port is going to endeavor to do. We're going to include it in our objectives of the things that we try to do. It isn't going to be mandatory, anything's going to be imposed on any tenants or any of the lessees at the port. However, we would like to think that we could lead by example and have them encourage. I will tell you that there is going to probably going to be a move to regulate, especially emissions in port environments by the federal government. So, some of these things that are unforeseen at this moment, we're not going to have a choice. We're going to have to do, whether it's a truck or vessel emissions. I think the navigation district has I think have a proven track record of doing things that fit very nicely into this initiative, and examples of that have been the Bahia Grande participation. You've got an item on the agenda right now that's going to be looking at the mitigation bank. We have partnered with the Brownsville Public Utilities Board on ocean water desalination. You've got another item on your agenda that's going to deal with looking at wind energy and the erection of those facilities at the Port of Brownsville. But it doesn't necessarily have to stop there. From a staff perspective, what we will do is that we will endeavor to look at all projects and add a list to that. Is that, well, how does it fit into either being considered eco-friendly, environmental friendly, whether it's a building project, whether it's a piece of equipment, or any of those. And we will simply look at it from the standpoint of whether or not it's cost-effective or it's in the best interest to do and present those options for your consideration. But we will incorporate it into the way we do our business going forward on capital projects and or other projects at the port. And then lastly, again, the only thing we would do is that we certainly would encourage other entities in the area. We would work with other entities in the area and perhaps even looking at developing some kind of regional approach to developing a program that all of the entities could support that incorporate some of the initiatives that other entities are talking about, whether it's going green, electric or energy efficiency or recycling or all of the things that would fit in a solid regional approach to being good stewards of our land. Unless you have any questions, that kind of pretty much summarizes it.
This was an item that initially, I think it was, Commissioner Arambula had brought up before, and we had kind of postponed on it because I believe the last time it came up on the agenda, the commissioner was in business out of town, so we waited till he was able to get back here. So I'll just pass it on to Commissioner Arambula, see if you got some comments regarding the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and fellow commissioners, Mr. Campirano and Donna Emart. It gives me great pleasure to see that the port is going in a proactive stance, and not only have they been or have we been taking the initiative to work with green projects, but setting the resolution first and foremost is obviously the best thing to do as discussed with our legal counsel, and then from that we'll set up a policy to make sure that everything's in place, and then we'll follow the guidelines set on that. But having myself working for the school district, the school district, or every single school district in the state of Texas is mandated to implement a recycling program. And not too many school districts are doing it, but the Brownsville Independent School District, with the pushing of the trustees and the superintendent, they've been working over the past 4 years in implementing and being in compliance with the state mandate to implement a recycling program. But when you have 54 campuses and 59 departments, it's a big undertaking that they're going to be doing. They're in the process of building a warehouse for the records facility, and they're also going to be building a maintenance department as well there. But along with that, they're going to have a commercial shredder, and just today we got word that they also got a grant for a $30,000 baler. So they're moving in that direction. The city on the other side is also working in the recycling program. And I spoke with Commissioner Camarillo just yesterday, and he told me that he was also going to be putting on the agenda a resolution for going green as well. And I also had the opportunity to communicate with Judge Cascos and our county commissioner who's with us here, Sofia Benavides. I expressed to her, what we were trying to do, and hopefully we could all collaborate at one point or another, because at the end of the day, all the recycling project, it just means more money, and the Port of Brownsville is a perfect place where a lot of that business can be geared towards us, whether it's paper, plastic, cardboard, or whatever. And I'm just excited that we're all collaborating in that direction. And I wanted to take the opportunity to pass on to my fellow board members as well as our council just a little letter that I wrote, and hopefully we'd like to attach this to the resolution if approved. Sure. I'll start with the board adopting a resolution on going green. The port shall have taken a proactive approach towards taking responsibility and setting the stage in creating an environmentally friendly port community. Uniting with the port lessees and creating a cooperative approach to develop environmental programs and projects is a good beginning. Our aim is to stimulate and entice future jobs, future business opportunities in an environmentally friendly setting, and reduce or neutralize the impact of port operations upon the environment and the region. At the federal level, the buzzword is energy savings and efficiency, and it is widely known that those who take a proactive approach in implementing green energy projects can benefit in acquiring funding. According to the American Association of Port Authority, the AAPA, virtually all ports seeking federal funding are currently looking or undertaking going green in one form or another. Here are some of those ports that have already implemented green initiatives. You have the Port of San Diego, the Port of Philadelphia, the Port of New York, the Delaware River Authority, the Port of New Jersey, the Port of Los Angeles. The Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach have adopted the San Pedro Bay Port's Clean Air Action Plan and have signed an agreement with the Port of Rotterdam in Europe to share best environmental practices. In our state of Texas here, the Port of Houston has launched a new advertising campaign promoting the environmental initiative. The Port of Houston has a partnership with Shell Oil Company that began in September of 2008, and they have an animated television and featuring the Clean and Green Critter Club. They use fanciful characters based on the real creatures that live in Houston's bayous and waterways. With the resolution in place, our next step should be to develop and adopt a board policy that will set guidelines for implementing initial tasks that can identify business opportunities and implement initiatives to reduce environmental impacts with the port and its lessees. Some of the goals that the port can look at in developing friendly environmental partnerships and programs may be pursuing an exchange agreement and collaborate with another port in exchanging information on environmental issues such as marine wildlife, air quality, soils and sediments, water quality, and community agreement. Number 2, waste management. Investors willing to spend in reducing waste through material reuse, for example, recycling and composting, or landfill material. And thirdly, in building infrastructure at the port, we can enhance the environmental performance of port buildings while maximizing long-term economic benefits. And last but not least, what we're trying to do is team up and pursue and teaming up with local leaders in the community to unite and work on these different projects. And finally, as leaders of the port community, we should all do our part to take a proactive approach and help in decreasing the impact of port operations on our surrounding community. Having said that, I'm just excited that we'll hopefully get this resolution passed and team up with the rest of the region to do something.
I want to commend Commissioner Arambula for his efforts regarding this resolution and this Going Green initiative. I've seen it I think everywhere. It's a movement that's around the country. Yeah. Last time I went to Washington, you could see it. The airlines are going green. Everywhere you go, everybody's going green, and I think it's a responsibility that we have as stewards for the port and for our community to initiate whatever efforts we can do to make the port a greener port, I guess.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, with that being said, if it's okay with the board commissioner, I'd like Commissioner Benavides to come up because she has something to say about what they have planned for the county that will in turn benefit the Port of Brownsville.
And I'd like to thank Commissioner Benavides for being here
taking the time out for date.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon. And I would like to let you all know that I bring greetings from the Cameron County Commissioner's Court. I spoke to Commissioner Arambula probably about 3 weeks ago,
yes,
2.5 weeks ago. And in doing so, he told me about this resolution that was going to be adopted today, hopefully by your board. And I'm here not only as your county commissioner for this area, but also as a member of the Commissioner's Court who applauds you for your efforts to take this initiative to go green. I am accompanied today by Mr. Robert Lopez, who is our Administrative Services Director. And he came on board as a safety risk coordinator about 2 years ago. And now all of a sudden he's got all these departments under him. But he also has implemented several programs which he will share with you for Cameron County. Along that line, I also would like to make a public appeal to the entities, to parents at home, the public. I have recently had a problem with trash or litter on South Padre Island and Boca Chica Beach, which are the two beaches that I represent. And I used to have park rangers in South Padre Island, and for some reason it was taken away from my area. And so law enforcement is not present there as visibly as it used to be. So therefore, the public has started to trash our beaches. And I know that our children are being taught at school to recycle, not to litter. But when we take our own children out to the beach and we don't set the example, then you have problems like I am encountering at this moment. I have taken the initiative to go daily, going car to car in the northern end of the island, all of Boca Chica Beach, asking everybody to please pick up after themselves. On Boca Chica Beach, I have a problem because the barrels that I have for garbage collection, the people steal them. They take them with them. I guess to burn trash or whatever. So it's kind of hard for me to keep enough on the beach. But once again, I think this is something that affects all of our community. And I ask everybody's cooperation and to please set an example for our children so that we can have good beaches for generations to come. Once again, I applaud you for your efforts. I am here, as well as the Commissioner's Court, to help you in any way that we can to move forward on this green initiative. I will ask Mr. Lopez to come up and let you know what all we have done at Cameron County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. Wow. Trashing our beach, and you see all that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you all for having me. My name is Robert Lopez, as Commissioner Menendez mentioned. Throughout the throughout the months, we've implemented different programs throughout the county, and some had started before I came, and I wanted to share new ideas with the county and moving forward with the Green Initiative. As Mr. Chairman mentioned, that throughout the country and actually throughout the world, I know unfortunately there are other countries that have taken the lead on a green initiative and are able to provide, I guess, cheaper labor in making some of these innovative technologies happen. For instance, solar, wind. So, not that the United States or our country is behind the 8 ball, but I know that there's a lot that we need. There's a lot of technologies there that we can implement that are at our hands, and especially with these grants that are available, makes it a lot easier to obtain and procure. One thing that we have done recently is that we brought forth. We entered into negotiations with our energy provider and able to reduce not the actual consumption, but the actual cost per kilowatt hour that the county was paying for energy. So, of course, in reducing the actual cost in kilowatt hour, we're able to reduce the total energy, or show some savings to the county for the savings. So that's something that it can easily be done in entering negotiations with the provider and seeing what type of rate they could give you. And because of the amount of consumption that the county is spending, we have a high rate due to all the buildings. It wasn't a big increase or decrease in value of the cost, but if you add that up with the total amount of consumption, it was a big chunk of change. So just to show you what a little penny or two in price due to the amount of consumption can really save. So that's, and as far as what was mentioned earlier about the emissions, I know coming down from the president, he's issued a lot of press releases and enforcing a lot of communities and a lot of government organizations and entities to try to reduce that. Some other stuff is very simple, little projects that we've done, from retrofitting lights, installing new ballasts, changing over from incandescent bulbs to fluorescent bulbs. All these little things, you might think, oh well, it's not going to make much of a difference, but it is promoting the green initiative, and it is going green. And at the end of the day, I believe that it does make a difference in what the total consumption of energy is being spent within that building or within that organization. Other little small technologies that we've used are going from your regular light switches to motion detectors. I know in certain our buildings, when I do walk through and audits, even over the weekends, there might be a restroom light that's on, nobody's there. So you multiply that, if it's a Friday or Saturday or Sunday, 48 hours, times whatever you're spending is energy gone to waste, and that's something that the taxpayers are paying for. So little things like that we've taken into consideration. And if somebody, fails to turn off the light, well, a motion sensor, of course, doesn't sense. Obviously, of course, somebody's in the bathroom and the light goes off because there's no motion, then we're in trouble. But the other little things we've done is trying to go paperless. We've implemented a lot of projects and are in the process of implementing a lot of projects right now. One thing, our purchasing office has gone to a complete paperless requisition system. So there's no more writing out, sitting down, filling out paperwork, printing out paperwork. Everything's done, via computer, via internet. It's a web-based program, very easy to use, and everything's approved through the computer. So no more, again, the form, filling it out, walking it up, to the purchasing office, waiting for a purchase order, et cetera, all done on the computer, and it completely eliminated the paperwork, other than wanting to complete a paper file. Scanning a scanning project is also, we're trying the process of promoting that right now. We're looking at installing solar lighting in some of our boat ramps. I know we're in the process of boat ramp, just Highway 48, and we've looked at doing solar lighting there as well. Future projects that we've considered, going into is, of course, implementing a full energy conservation program for the county, and that's evaluating every single building and installing either, motion sensors, or try to see where we can actually reduce not only the price that we've done, but the actual consumption of energy to the building. Of course, implementing a recycling program, which is very big. I believe the county at one point in time had one, and I think that's an issue that we need to revisit and definitely continue to promote. And of course, is continuing to implement, new and innovative technologies to the county. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Questions?
Mr. Lopez, we appreciate you coming here.
Mr. Chairman, I have one comment
Yes.
I'd like to make. Well, I support this resolution, and it's a very well-written resolution, as I've mentioned before. We have to keep in mind that as commissioners and staff, that one of our main duties here is to provide a business-friendly environment, and that so our existing tenants and new businesses can flourish here and create jobs. And going green's great, I support it, but we have to keep in mind paragraph 5 in this resolution at all times, where I support Brownsville endeavor to explore and incorporate in its practices and operations going green initiatives that strike a balance between economic development and environmental stewardships. Very, very important to keep that balance, because we can go way away in the wrong direction, and we're so desperately in need of jobs and business that we can run it off, and we can cause our existing tenants to have to close shop. So it's very, very important to keep that in mind. I just want to make that clear that we have to maintain a business-friendly environment here at all times. So anyway.
And if I may add, Mr. Vice Chair, that brings up an excellent point. Recently, the Department of Labor, I believe, through the RRA grants, did I say that right? Have actually issued grants for promoting green jobs. So as far as creating jobs, there are grants out there that would substantiate or provide that. And they're at our fingertips, just waiting to apply, and promoting. It's either training or electricians that might have solar energy background. So those are things to consider as far as applying for those grants and actually in the creation of jobs. So that's a very, very good point. Something to look into.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
I have
Any further comments?
I have a comment, but it was to Commissioner Benavides. I commend you all for what you're doing at the boat ramp on 48. It's a wonderful thing, much needed. I would hope, I made a comment at last meeting, you weren't present, that perhaps the highway department just increased the speed limit to 70 miles an hour in that area. That perhaps we could talk to them while we're doing this, so that when we reopen the boat ramp, they lower the speed limit and put in the caution lights, so we won't have any accidents happen there that could happen. It can be a dangerous place because you're coming up or you're slowing down, and just traffic needs to slow down in that area. It's just an observation I've made. I drive by there regularly. I'm a boater, and I want everybody to be safe. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Renfro.
Yes.
Will this have a timeline? Will we be able to come back and amend it if we have to?
The resolution simply, I think, more in spirit, talks about what we're going to endeavor to do. I mean, you know, if you're going to establish policies and things, that's still something that comes forward. You know, this kind of sets in motion that we're going to adopt a philosophy that this is what we're going to do. This is the direction we want to go. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of projects and programs and this, you know, I mean, we're going to live within our means, obviously, but we will begin to look at issues and projects, and as we begin to go forward, that would incorporate this philosophy of taking into account our best foot forward as it relates to some of the objectives that are listed in the resolution.
I can certainly understand the need for this. For instance, no smoking in restaurants and public buildings and public meetings is something that I appreciate, being in this meeting tonight and not have a smoke-filled room. That's a very nice and good thing, a very healthy thing. I just have one question. Commissioner Rumba, were you, when you said you'd like this letter of yours attached to that, is that for informational purposes, just so people would know in the future what your intentions were?
Absolutely.
But this is not...
If we can add it as part of the item number 7 as an attachment.
My question to that is that we're not saying that we're going to do everything that San Francisco and Los Angeles and all of these guys are doing, you know, commit to their standards, because they may not apply to...
For informational purposes.
Just for informational purposes.
We'll make the letter part of the minutes.
Okay, great. Making that's what I wanted. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you very much.
Do we have a motion to approve as presented with the letter?
So moved.
We got a motion by Commissioner Reed. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Cavan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries.
Item number 5, HCR Shiner Mosley on the proposed Brownsville Navigation District Mitigation Bank.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Dr. Joe Mosley and Tom Rodiner are here. As you know, we engaged their services to move forward with developing a prospectus that would be one of the elements in the step in towards making a decision to permit a mitigation bank at the Brownsville Navigation District, and they're kind of moving along on their engagement, and this is a good time to provide a status report. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Mosley.
Thank you, Eddie. I believe each of you have a copy of this handout, which is a very simple flip chart. It goes back, shows what we've done, where we are, what is remaining. Current status makes me very nervous. Everything is going too smooth. That always makes me nervous. Another document that you have multiple copies of is this one, prospectus.
Yes.
I will point out the Corps does not have any provisions for handling the public notice in electronic format, so it's paperwork. That is not by our decision, that is the Corps' decision. This is virtually ready to submit. We've got it for the review copy. It will go out very soon for public comment and what we think is especially important agency comment. We should have those back in hand in September. At this time, it can be assessed and decisions can be made on the next step. If everything continues as is, and we go the next step, that involves preparing implementation documents, a formal interagency review of those documents, the Corps' decision on the permitting, and then implementing. One thing to keep in mind, the new regulations that took effect just over a year ago, last July, says if you get a permit and there is a mitigation bank, you are strongly encouraged to use that mitigation bank. So if somebody permits something on South Padre Island or up at Port Mansfield, anywhere in the lower Laguna Madre, the Corps will say, go to the mitigation bank purchase mitigation credit. Kind of a strong supporter for the business. The third page is just the overall chart that we've shown you before. The items that are highlighted are what have been accomplished to date. One of the things, as you may recall from the feasibility study, our studies indicate that probably between 2,500 and 4,000 acres of mitigation credit over the next 50 years in the lower Laguna Madre. The service area is everything from the land cut to the divide between the ship channel and the river. This prospectus document, 60 pages, 8.5 to 11, all got to be black and white. It's the basis for the public notice. In addition, we're preparing color graphics, which we give to the Corps. They will post those on their website. So if somebody says, we can't read these, they go to the website.
Mr. Shiner?
Yes, sir.
When you said from the cut, the Port Mansfield cut,
The land cut.
the land cut,
20 miles north of Fort Brownsville.
okay, from there to the south side of our channel, or all the way to the mouth of the river?
It would go from the Gulf, across the island, across Boca Chica, and inland. But if you go south, it would go to the drainage divide between the ship channel and the river.
Okay.
Simply trying to extend it there would have involved IBWC and all sorts of other things that would have, in our opinion, the Corps would have immensely complicated.
Okay, just checking, just wanted to know.
Our goal is we will submit this by the 20th. Hopefully, the public notice will be out by August 1st, 30-day comment period. And we should have all the responses and back to this commission by the end of September with our recommendations. However, we are in the middle of we'll be in the middle of hurricane season. The Corps has been known frequently to suspend all permit processing, this sort of thing, due to hurricanes. The agencies often request extra time. They usually get it, 30 days, and then August is a vacation time. We will be closely working with the agencies during the comment period. We're dealing with individuals, some of which we've worked with 25 years. We've had them all down here. Eddie, you've been to what, one meeting? Donna's been to two with them. We had the agencies down here for a 2-day work session. Everything seems to be going very, very good. The prospectus basically describes the current conditions, how the bank will be established, how the bank will be operated, and will discuss the sites, the improvements at the sites, how you protect it, and the long-term protection. Key issues: habitat conversion. Almost everything you've got is already aquatic habitat. So that means it's already classified as wetland. And while we're doing a wetland mitigation bank, we're converting one type of wetland to another, upgrading it or changing it. For example, in one site, we propose to convert sand flats to seagrass. That immediately raises questions because of the endangered species piping plover use sand flats. What we're looking at, we can find no evidence of use, or U.S. Fish and Wildlife aware of it. But these issues will come up. We've talked about them a lot. Endangered species, we're trying very hard to accommodate Fish and Wildlife concerns over cats. And no, cats certainly are not a wetland species, but that is the #1 priority among the refuge is the north-south migration of cats. Permanent protection and management, we recommend using a conservation easement. It's well known. It's a relatively straightforward document. There are many versions, and you can put all sorts of interesting provisions in it. For example, you may commit it in perpetuity for wetlands, but you can also install a provision. If suddenly this area, which does not now have any port potential, in 50 years becomes something great, find something else, substitute it for it, and convert it over. That's a possibility. Credits, the Corps in particular likes to use a mathematical model called HGM, Hydrogeomorphic Assessment. Some of the agencies do. Other of the agencies laugh at it, say it's a lot of numerical exercise. Also, it does not apply strictly to the lower Laguna Madre. It's just so different than the wetlands that we developed to apply to. So we're proposing to use the old acre approach. If you're going to create an acre, now it may be low, medium, or high, and there's some ratios and things in it which are described in detail in Appendix A. We hope that we will prevail with that. We're fussing with the state a little. The General Land Office is wanting to take the position if seagrass is impacted on state-owned land. Let's say somebody is seeking a permit to impact some seagrass on state-owned lands, maybe for another channel, either to the backside of Padre Island or up coast there a little ways. The Land Office says, some state lands, we want the mitigation on state lands. Well, currently they have no place on any state lands to do mitigation, so we're going back and forth with them. They said, well, just pay us and we'll be happy. I said, this bank is not an infinite money generator. The port reclamation, land replacement, that's if you put something in a bank and in a few decades it suddenly becomes very valuable to the potential. Can you get it out? Probably. Then the unknown. I've been to a lot of projects in the last 40 years. Every major project, something that nobody dreamed of, rears up and bites you. You have to deal with it. We don't know what that is yet, but something will. One of the key items is described on page 6 is the 12-point mitigation plan. Most of them are pretty straightforward and technical. 3 of them I want to bring to your attention. A site protection instrument. This would be what we're recommending is a conservation easement. And very interestingly, once you put the land in the conservation easement, before you do one thing to help the habitat, you can typically claim 10 to 15% and use it for your own mitigation or sell it to somebody else. That's because the agency's feel is a value. Oh, we know it's set aside. You always upgrade it later. We think that's important. This credit determination methodology, which is either the mathematical model or the simple area ratios. And the next to the last one, the adoptive management plan. In a lot of the discussion that I was involved in, they started preparing these new regs that were adopted last year back in the mid-90s, and I was spending entirely too much time in DC at the time. And the adoptive management plan is kind of, what if everything goes to hell, then what do you do? Suppose you get all the banks set up and all of a sudden the Category 5 storm comes along and it all goes away. It's basically drop back, figure out what to do and punt in. Going to the next slide, that shows us that's a map showing all of the, approximately all of the district's properties. We screened virtually all of it, identified areas that did not appear to be subject for any commercial or conventional port use. Came up with 2, which are also shown on page 8. Let me put this chart up here. Thank you, sir. The north side, and that's not 21 miles, that's approximately 1 mile north of the Shrimp Boat Basin. End of San Martin Lake, Rancho Viejo floodway comes down this way. We're proposing that this area, which is about 300 acres, be initially placed in the mitigation bank. It's got some valuable habitat now. There's some of the best mangroves you will find anywhere in the United States outside of South Florida there. Come in, do some channelization improvement, some elevation changes so that cross-section across here, you come into the bank, a new channel over here, come through a lake, come through some high ground, out of it. This would give us more mangroves, some seagrass, and some, we think, very good vegetated wetlands. The southern one is a little more creative. This is really an expansion of what is there now. If you also recall, we had said that our initial studies indicated that we needed to provide for seagrass, sand flats, sand algal flats, vegetated flats, mangroves, and some deep water. This one is located 6 miles east of the Shrimp Boat Basin. That's about 6 miles east of where your road and rail on the south side of the channel stop. But certainly far beyond what we anticipate would be anything in the anticipated port development future. We've discussed it with port staff. I know you've got several master plans and things underway. This is down almost to Port Isabel, Brownsville Ship Channel. You come in here. This area now gets flooded a little. But the water that gets here now comes from 6 miles east of there through South Bay. It's typically only, you still float anything in it, maybe 3 or 4 inches at the most. But we would do a major cut off of the ship channel, cross-sectional area of maybe 2,000 square feet to get significant water in here, take much of it down to 3.5 to 4.5 feet, according to, he's generally considered probably the world's expert on seagrass and lower Laguna Madre, Ken Dutton up at the University of Texas Marine Science Institute, Port Aransas. I've known him for many years, and we have collaborated on this with him. The optimum is about 1.1 to 1.5 meters, so we can stay in that range. Much of this area would be dredged out, not dredged, excavated. It'd be much cheaper to excavate it with earth-moving equipment, whether it's scrapers or backhoe and trucks, than it will be to dredge in that shallow of water. Essentially, take most of it down to that depth, leave one loma, high ground, take the excavated material, pile it up in a long linear loma. That will contribute to cat migration, then have sloping sides around it. They'll provide us on the order of 150 acres of seagrass, quite a bit of marginal areas on the sloping sides, and so on.
And what is the total size or the acreage there on that?
On the bottom
Section?
Approximately 300 each.
300 each?
The 600 acres, based on the demand study that we did. Those, and they're not precise studies, they were best case guesstimates. Because who's going to know what's going to be permitted down here over the next 50 years?
Are any structures allowed at all in that area? And the reason I ask that question, because
yes.
we're gonna, there are.
There is, our firm, not us, not Corpus Christi, not me, but our Omaha and Minneapolis do a lot of wind farms. We're also working as consultants on some, not in the Brownsville area. We believe that a wind farm could be placed within a mitigation bank with all the agencies buy-in. You would lose some of the bank's credit. Best estimates, our guys think maybe 10 to 15%. If you had a 100-acre bank,
But you don't know, don't know that for sure. You know, I mean, there isn't anything that you can tell us that if we did this, structures would be prohibited or they would be allowed. because that's going to impact.
Let me see if I can amplify on that. How negotiable is the conservation easement? Could you put in the easement that we reserve the right to,
Yes.
whether it's build a wind farm or whatever a contemplated use might be?
We specifically discussed with the agencies the following. Several things. What if we need to put pipelines through it? Well, take out your pipeline right away, that's X acres. The construction area, if it's all done quickly, probably won't have any major impacts. If you need to put a road through it, rail through it, and brought up wind farms. There's always the bird issue with the wind farms, but would all have to be negotiated. But I would anticipate the conservation easement would be structured so that if you set it up and you haven't built out all the wetlands yet, you could go back and put other things in there and just lose the acreage. If you have already built the wetlands and you need to put an access road or a foundation for a wind farm in it, you would just have to replace that somewhere else within the bank area.
We did do an overlay of our existing lease, and it did not affect.
Well, what concerns me is we're going to be voting on, or at least discussing, a wind farm, and it's a very large area. I'm not sure where these two relate. That'll be discussed, I guess, later on. And so we just have to be extremely careful that we don't get ourselves in a trap.
But the existing one, the existing lease, it did not affect.
Right. These two are outside of what you're going to be talking about on the existing. Now, the deal really for these more than anything is the other question we have is where are other areas outside of that one lease you're talking about where you can erect windmills, and we certainly want to leave our options open.
Okay. That's all I was concerned about.
I have a question, and that is, when we dig this channel there, will that provide navigation to fishermen to come in here and fish in that area?
It's George's responsibility.
Okay. Now, if the fishermen's propellers start cutting up the seagrasses, will we be held responsible, or will we lose mitigation land bank deal, or will the fishermen be responsible, or will it just grow back?
I will not address the latter question. I have been running outboard in the Lower Laguna Madre off and on since 1966. I won't touch that question. But one of the things the state is doing in other places, they're setting up prop-free zones. There's a large one in the Carpets area in Redfish Bay. So you simply tilt your big motor up and either pole or use a trolling motor. There are ways to deal with it, and certainly where everybody's coming in and out through one channel, that makes it a lot easier than to enforce a patch out in the middle of the bay.
Everyone but
So the Fish and Wildlife or Parks and Wildlife would be actually doing the enforcement. We would not have to go enforce that. But I love to fish in the shallow water for the reds and the trouts too, you know. I mean, I'm not, and I know what can happen, but I just want to know that we wouldn't have to be the ones that had to patrol this area, making sure that, or enforcing this, right?
Well, I think there's a lot of still those unknowns. I mean, the mitigation, the bank will be ours. I mean, we would be responsible for its maintenance and its upkeep. Now, does that include, how far does that go? But I mean, I think those are the kinds of questions that need to be asked.
Some of those items will come up in the comments from the agencies.
Yeah.
For example, one of the items that could be done is simply put a cable or a timber structure across it to eliminate boats from getting in there. But this is going to be a pretty good 200, 300 acres of fishing grounds that is not readily accessible unless you walk a very long ways or have keys to the port property.
Well, that, or you could put something to where if you went in with an outboard motor and you had signage that said so, it's going to catch your outboard motor. that you'd only be able to go in by
If it becomes an
kayak.
area where it'll be known to produce fishing, you're going to have people access at some point. It could be kayaks, it could be some other,
Yeah.
no different than Bahia Grande that they're talking about,
Yeah.
passive recreational type uses.
No, I mean, I know this right over there by South Bay, and when you get that full of seagrass, you're gonna have lots of fish there. You're gonna have an estuary there that you're gonna have lots of big fish in that area, especially if it's 3 to 5 feet deep. It's gonna be excellent fishing grounds. Clear water too.
Yes, sir. One follow-up to your comments, Commissioner Reed. Most of the studies that have been done on wind farms for down here, if you're looking at a typical large tower, as a very general criteria, about 1 tower per 20 to 25 acres. That's how many of these you can put without creating significant interference in the wind patterns between them. This is based on wind conditions in Corpus, and they're fairly similar here. And a lot of people have different opinions on this, but those are kind of the industry standards. Let's assume that everything comes back positive, and if we proceed, what are the next steps? First, prepare the implementation documents. These are semi-legal documents. Many of them will get very detailed in legalese. One is the detailed mitigation plan. Another one is the conservation easement. I'm now collecting conservation easements from across the country. A lot of them have interesting pictures in them. We'll certainly work closely with your council in putting one together. The next item is what I call the management document. This is a basic contract between the port and the Corps of Engineers for how the whole thing will be set up and run. The next item is the use purchase agreement. This will be the document that the Corps will have to sign off on, but it's really how you will either use the mitigation credits yourself, what you will do and how you will do it, or if you sell them to a third party, a port tenant who needs mitigation for a project they want to do on port land, or somebody off-site. There will be these very detailed agreements, and then a post-development management agreement. As we point out in the prospectus, and we've discussed this at length with staff, once it is fully built out, the habitat is there, it's done, there's nothing else to do with it, it might be very good to turn it over to some third party for management in perpetuity. For example, a good candidate might be U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. As y'all are probably well aware, you currently lease about, I think one lease is for 5,200 acres, one's for about 500 acres. In this area, it actually covers part of this. We have discussed this with them. They're certainly willing to talk about releasing it. Their lease expires in 2023, and they would like to much prefer to see something done in perpetuity. Then we take those implementation documents. They do not go out for any more public comment. They do go out for agency review. If there's no objection, should be going 60 to 90 days. If any of the agencies really object, then it could add 90 to 180 days for additional reviews. Once you're approved, announce the approval, get the conservation easement in place, start selling, and begin establishment and operation of the bank. That's where we're at. I would propose that we not come back to see you again in a formal presentation until we have the agency comments together, have assessed them, and have an analysis of these don't really mean anything, these are just, we handle all of these, and here are any deal killers that exist. We will be staying in close touch and getting copies of all the comments of the staff and your general counsel.
Thank you.
Any other comment?
Dr. Mosley, how long have you folks been working with the Port of Brownsville?
I was first here June the 3rd of 1970. At the time, I was in the governor's office. just getting there, Texas' first coastal program, and I was told, need to go down and see this character in Brownsville called Al Cisneros. At the time, Al had just made some headlines because he hadn't been port director too long at the time and had been asked to submit the three largest minority names in the county. I think James Smith, Jones, and something else. It was a big newspaper flap.
The reason I was asking, because you know, everything that you presented, I've seen you and we've seen you a couple of times come in here, and every time you present us, it just seems like, you know, you empower us with everything that you're doing. But I really admire for the teamwork effort that you have done with the folks who are our director and then the staff, because it seems like, you know, you guys have got a good relationship in putting all these projects together, and you can tell by all the knowledge and experience that you guys have put forward, and I'm just happy to see that you guys are on board with us on that.
Well, one thing I've learned over 40 years of this doing, whether it was with the state in my earlier years or since 80 in the private consulting, you've got to work with the clients, the agencies, and the associated public interests, whether they are necessarily positive or negative. But you got to bring them all together to make the deal work. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. The only comments I would add and the kind of things as this whole thing gets developed, and I know we had this discussion early on when the agency reps were here, is that, you know, we need to make this thing, especially if you're going to determine how you're going to value the credits and how you're going to sell them, that it's explainable. We don't want to make this thing so complicated that we don't understand how to explain it to somebody that comes in, third party or whatever. It says, you know, I need this, how much is it going to cost me, that we couldn't tell them how we arrived at that number. I mean, so I think, you know, it's the old KISS theory, and we even talked about it at one of the agency meetings. I mean, nobody's done this, so it's how do you do something that, you know, aspires to the KISS theory of trying to keep it as simple as possible, and that we can, you know, go in here and really clearly say, you know, this is what it costs for these reasons, and this is how we came up with those values, and not have to call Dr. Mosley, PhD, to explain it to everyone every time we do this. That would be good for you, but it wouldn't be good for us.
That would have an advantage, except I'm not going to be completely retiring, but I'm semi-retiring pretty soon.
One thing, just to be clear. So at this point, you're going to proceed with completing the prospectus, getting the comments. And so once all that is done, that is really where we have to make a decision whether we go forward or not.
Yes, and very importantly, when the agencies get this document, and they pretty well know what's in it, they've listened to us enough, they should, and seen enough of it on the ground, then they have to go in writing for the first time, since it's a major mitigation bank, the first port-related, or the first port mitigation bank being done in Galveston. To the best of my knowledge, there are only about 4 active ones being pursued anywhere in the country. And by the way, the first one that was done, I was even involved in that back in 1988. That was for LA Long Beach. They wanted to get their major project 25 years ago. They went halfway to Mexico and redid a whole 4,000 acre review. And they had no environmental well.
Yeah. And then the only other thing, just for you all and everyone here and staff and all that, is that the 2 areas that are being looked at for where you're going to establish the bank, that those areas are something that, you know, we can live with. Again, they're both outside of areas that we've overlaid. All of those areas are going to be difficult to develop simply because of where they're located. The Lomas Preserve, which is the one on the bottom, includes that. You know, that's probably from a development standpoint, but you've got a piece over here that runs, you know, along 48, you know, likelihood of seeing anything, especially on the north side, close to Lago San Martin, and when you get into it. But, you know, if we're comfortable with where we're looking and how we're going to utilize that, you know, that's real important, that, you know, we don't get into the process of doing the application and the permitting, and then, well, we've changed our mind on the sites. I mean, that's, you know, that's one thing that I really want to stress, that, you know, the sites are or areas that we can live with. Because, in many respects, you're taking pieces of property. If we do this, and he said, in perpetuity, we may be turning them into something that would be very hard to convert, even though you may keep, language in your instrument that would say you can convert it in the future. We're going to create something really great out of these areas, but they're not going to be great for development potential. Right.
And one of the things, and we've been working, as I said, working with the Port of Brownsville, various port directors back to the 70s. In the mid-80s, a major firm, Peter Kiewit and Sons, was looking for a location for a big offshore fabrication yard. They've now got a 600-acre one they've done in Carpus. We were down here. We looked very hard at Brownsville. You had the sites, and the reasons they chose to go elsewhere had nothing to do with what the port had available site-wise. Another possibility, if you're looking at, who knows, next 20, 30 years, the grassroots chemical plant, the grassroots refinery. Those locations, there are plenty of places on port property to find 300 or 400 acres to do something like that that would not encounter the environmental problems that you would with this north side because of the San Martin Lake and the Viejo drainage. Another thing we have talked about with the agencies, we look ahead of this first phase, looking at future mitigation banks that really works good, then what? Maybe the thing to do is not to try to go out here and do a whole bunch of wetlands in places, but rather thinking a big picture. Looking at the whole drainage issue and reconstruction of historical drainage from the city of, the whole Brownsville area, where it goes, how it's done. That we don't even talk about right now, but that thinking about long after I'm out of this 20, 25 years down the road. There's some interesting potential there. Thank you, gentlemen, and we will be back as soon as we have something.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Item number 6, Texas Border Coalition.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we'd had a request from the Texas Border Coalition to do a presentation to the Port of Brownsville. They've been, I know that I guess Thursday of last week they had a presentation of the county commissioners, and they've been meeting with some of the area entities. I did include some information in your package, but Mr. Blaine Bull with the coalition is here and to make a presentation on what the coalition's about and they're
Before Dr. Mosley leaves, I got to tell my Dr. Mosley story. Earlier in my life, I spent a lot of time working for Senator Benson, both when he was in office and then out of office. And I was a young guy. And Joe would bring groups up to see the senator and sometimes introduce me, and he would present this stuff that to me, I was much younger, was like a scheme. You are never going to pull this scheme off. And yet, I used to travel around Gulf Coast, South Texas, and it's amazing how many of those schemes you have managed to pull off that generate jobs and economic development.
Even one when Michelle still had hair and Larry Myers just started to work with us.
That was before me.
When I took the dozen Liberty ships, we're now working on some more reefs. We get them done, they'll be salvaged down here.
So I've seen his vision come true.
Is this the same thing as we have?
Yes, it is. It is.
And I promise you, I'm not going to walk you through the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Respect for your time, I just want to cover some high points. My name is Blaine Bull. I'm with a firm called Novo, and we have offices in Washington, D.C., Dallas, Austin, and Mexico City. And as I just confessed, we're all kind of old political hacks of one persuasion or another that have gotten into management consultancy and strategic communications. TBIC, Texas Border Coalition, has been a client of ours for 2 years. TBIC was created a number of years ago, but to generate a voice for the border leadership up and down the Texas-Mexico border. The port. You guys got your voice, you got your advocates. City of Harlingen, McAllen, Webb County, El Paso. But there wasn't a voice, and again, when I worked for Senator Benson, oftentimes people would come up and it was like, Monday you saw this group, Wednesday you saw this group, Friday you saw a third group, and they all wanted to kind of stab each other for the same pot of money. TBIC was created with the notion of let's make the pot larger, but let's put focus on the border and the needs of the border. So we now have a good collection of local elected officials, county, municipalities, business leaders, and we just started reaching out to other entities like you, operating primarily in an advocacy position in Washington, D.C. and Austin. We have great notoriety as an organization on the wall. Secretary Chertoff has a special place in his mind for Texas Border Coalition because we fought hard against the wall on the notion of one size doesn't fit all. What works in San Diego doesn't necessarily work in Brownsville or Eagle Pass. For instance, we were very successful as an organization working for the Hidalgo County Levee project because there was border security, but it also was dealing with an issue that had to be addressed by that community. TBIC lending its voice backing up that project, so you had the mayor of El Paso basically advocating for a project way downriver. That's kind of the mission and the purpose of TBIC. And again, we've got notoriety because of the wall, but we work on education and health care and workforce development. Some examples, this legislative session, TBIC actually sponsored, we didn't sponsor it, the state senator and state representative sponsored, at the request of the Texas Border Coalition, adult basic education. Kind of refinement of the criteria so more of the money got sent to the community colleges operating along the Texas-Mexico border. Got it passed, got signed into law. Programs are just now starting to spit out money, again, for adults to get their GEDs in literacy, but also workforce training, healthcare, CHIP program, increased funding at the state level. We can't say we were responsible for it, but TBIC, the elected representatives and the business leaders along the border lent their voice to that effort and was very credible. Washington, D.C., it's the same thing. We've been involved a lot in transportation. My partner, a number of partners, but I've got one in particular that I work with on this. He spent another number of years working in the appropriations process in the House, 26 years on Capitol Hill. Former boss is now chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee. Has a lot to say about dollars that go to our ports. So again, from a Texas-Mexico perspective, our ports of entry, we're doing real well when it comes to technology, card readers, the new radar looking at trucks. We're getting robbed blind on personnel issues and infrastructure. Our ports and bridges are crumbling. Big chunk of money in the stimulus, $720 million for infrastructure needs for our ports. A big chunk went up to the U.S.-Canadian border, and a big chunk went to Nogales, Arizona, because Secretary Napolitano's chief of staff used to be the mayor of Nogales. We lost, but we're not going to go away quietly. As an organization, we've requested a meeting with Napolitano. We've already met with the respective staff of the Senate Appropriations Committee and the House Appropriations Subcommittee to say, guys, this process that y'all go through where you let the agencies pick one big project on infrastructure and you fund it and everything else gets put on the list for later. Let's do 30 and get 30 projects kind of in the works. They're not going to be great, big, huge like Nogales, but lots of, so those are the things TBIC is doing. We have relationships in DC and Austin. We have networks. We are nothing without the business leadership, people like you, and the elected officials like you. When we get the mayor or the county judges up and down the Texas border and we want to go see Governor Perry and talk about an issue that is near and dear to our heart, they pay attention. You have very good congressmen working on your behalf. And I'm not just talking about Congressman Ortiz, but all 5 of the guys that are along the border. And Senator Hutchinson and Cornyn. But they're working, it's like, Henry Cuellar in Laredo, he's working for Laredo. With TBIC, we call upon him and we say, okay, we want to help you do things for Laredo, but we want you to be supportive of what Congressman Reyes has going on in El Paso and what Congressman Ortiz has going on in Cameron County, which is kind of a new thing. I mean, that's not what they've heard over the years. And again, TBIC's not new. TBIC's been going. TBIC has made its mark. You know, we just need we got a new administration, lots of things changing. Now's the time to kind of reintroduce TBIC and kind of fresh leadership, more energetic. We're going to focus on, as I said, the port issues, infrastructure and personnel, but also transportation. TBIC, I don't believe, will find the leadership getting into debate about whether project money should go to Cameron County, Webb County, or Hidalgo County. But there are projects that benefit regions. Or, you know, maybe someone's in the queue before others. In which case, again, when you've got an entire leadership representing the border backing up a specific project plan, like the Tiger grants. You know, I don't know that people would ever get involved in endorsing a specific Tiger grant, but I don't know that they wouldn't. You know, so it's something to discuss, and that's why I'm here to tell you a little bit about we are making the rounds up and down the border, talking to mayors, county judges, city commissions, county commissioners, business leaders. Here's what we're doing. Here's what our plans are for the future. What can we do to help you with? We were down at Port Isabel yesterday, talked to their city commission. They've never had a state legislative agenda. They'd like to put one together for the next legislative session. We said, sure, we'll help you. You know, we'll help you figure out, you know, what's reasonable, what's realistic, and kind of strategically how to go about it. You got to go do it. And then where TBIC can help support what you want to do, TBIC will be there. But those are the type of things that Texas Border Coalition offers. And I just want to tell you all a little bit about what we do and request your consideration to participate with us financially. But just as important is your time and your effort. We have mayors and judges that we hear from every day. What are you doing for me today? Most of them are not that way. Most of them, Mayor Cook in El Paso, Judge Salinas in Hidalgo County, they're going to call us when they need help or they need some advice. And then we call them when we need them to make a phone call or attend a meeting or, you know, kind of get behind something that maybe is not within their jurisdiction. And again, that's really the strength of the organization is the leadership and the names. I didn't have a whole lot of brochures, but the names on the back of the brochure of both the elected officials and the communities and organizations they represent. The more that we have involved, the stronger the voice of the Texas-Mexico border community.
I have a question. As a banker and someone that's been involved in economic development for many years, I applaud this. I mean, it's been needed for a long, long time. I do have one question, and maybe it's a selfish question, only because I'm port commissioner. But we're the only deep water port on the border.
Yep.
And
that would probably be the only game in town.
So how do we get somebody, I mean, obviously we have a tremendous amount of infrastructure issues. And obviously everybody's along the border, they're looking at land bridges because that's what impacts them and what's going on there. How do you convey to somebody up the river that having good infrastructure at the Port of Brownsville is vital to this region? I mean, not only Brownsville, but the whole valley, which is, you know, a couple million people now. I mean, how are you going to do that?
First of all, you would have to make the argument. I mean, again, you'd be the only game in town.
Right.
But most of these individuals, economic development, job creation is big on their list. And so conceptually, they get that. I don't know that it would be that hard of a sell. But again, there would have to be a sell.
One of the problems right now that I can foresee is that for some reason there's no distinction on ports between inland ports and water ports when it comes to funding. And deep water ports should have a priority over an inland port. Because an inland port is just a place where, things are stopped long enough to go somewhere where they're going to be shipped out by water normally or something. But the water port should have a different distinction and be in a different category than an inland port when it comes to funding and to consideration for these things. And I think that they have purposely, strategically placed themselves, knowing that there was a deep pocket here. I mean, I have to admire them for it. Place themselves in a place where they can go and plug into that money and compete for that money against us. When we need our channel deepened, they say, well, we need our road paved or our, whatever, and so our road's cheaper to pave than their channel it is to dig, or the rail deal.
And your point's valid, and our group's actually been talking about that, because there's also this distinction between, you've got the inland port at Alliance Airport north of Fort Worth, a project I worked on with Mr. Perot years ago. It gets a lot of attention from GSA's office in Fort Worth. But that's a different category than the Laredo bridges, or what you've got going on down here. So it seems like there ought to be some distinctions. Now what does that mean and how do you define it? One of the things we're talking about right now is having kind of we don't have a better name for it now, but almost a summit gathering, September, October, of ports along the Texas-Mexico border to talk about these issues. Because right now there's a strong feeling that...
Talking about inland ports and water ports? When you talk about ports, because along the Texas-Mexico border, we are the only water port.
It's an open question right now. I will tell you, in their mind, and when I say they, the members, the leadership of TVIC, what they don't want to include are the ports in San Antonio and Alliance and Plano, Texas. It's kind of like, we're talking about those counties that abut the Texas-Mexico border.
Well, talking about just ports of entry versus inland ports.
Yes, I realize that. And if we look at the budget that is allotted to the Port of Houston, and we look at the Port of Brownsville and the other ports along the Texas Gulf Coast, there's a great discrepancy between the funding, sometimes even the amount of money that they request and what is actually allocated. Sometimes they allocate more money than they request to them. I mean, they don't seem to want to do the same for us, but
is the difference between the Gulf ports versus the Atlantic and Pacific coast, or is there a difference just between the Port of Brownsville versus Corpus Christi, Houston, New Orleans?
There are.
That's for sure.
and I think that probably is the answer.
Yeah.
Which is why our guys, again, they are, I admit, they're thinking about, Laredo, Eagle Pass, Del Rio.
I think what Commissioner Collins, and I hope I'm getting this, and this is something that, is an issue among, let's talk about ports, as ports are known, ports who are deep water ports are on the Texas coast, is that the definition of ports, as we know them, has been expanded to include inland ports and ports of entry.
That's
and so there has to be a clear distinction. And in fact, inland ports enjoy perhaps a greater policy advantage because they're tied to road infrastructure with the Texas Department of Transportation, because they have a vested interest in building roads, whereas water ports are kind of out there on their own. So, I guess the question to some degree, and it's no different asking you than I asked your colleague who was there last week, is that again, we're a different animal in terms of a port. We don't want to be placed in a category, or we shouldn't be placed in a category that now, because it has port in there, that we're there with with everybody that has an international crossing that's a port of entry, competing for what is a limited pot of money, or how do you deal with that? And in many respects, when you look at what you do, that one of the areas that probably, has to be explored is that, one of your objectives here is obviously something that we do share in common, and that is the flow of goods and products between Texas and Mexico. But we would be very unique to the group. I mean, and I think the response I got was, well, we don't know how to treat you. That's why we would ask you. You tell us how we would treat you. And that's kind of, I think, a big question mark as to how do we fit into the scheme of the Texas, border coalition as it relates to what we do as a port. And we can convince, I think, McAllen, Edinburgh, Harlingen about the impact of the port in the region, but how do you convince Laredo, Eagle Pass, and Del Rio?
And El Paso.
And El Paso.
You mentioned something about financial support. What are you looking at?
Organizations such as yours, we're talking about $10,000 a year. Of course, we're halfway into the year. So, something short of that. But again, I think that's a discussion you could have with the leadership of TBIC. As much as anything else, it's the name and, some of you and your time being involved.
I think we've got some things to look at here, but if we could get somehow the benefit that adult education got, and health care and some other things of that nature, if we could get the same kind of results there that we got for our Deepwater port, then I think we would really be very interested.
Well, and I think my colleague...
How to get there,
yeah.
I think that's what we need to do, is have a plan before we can commit the money. We've kind of got to, I think maybe our staff and your leadership need to come up with an idea of how, before we commit money, to do that, because money's short right now. Things are, cargo's down and things are, and so we don't have excess funds. We're not broke, but we're not running out of money, but we don't want to run out of money either.
I think that's a real good idea because, again, y'all are a unique beast. It could work to your advantage because you are unique and would be unique in the group. Or, you could kind of get penalized by being, kind of locked in with everybody else. So having that conversation, again, I'm not the decision maker in this. I can make recommendations.
Well, there's where we'd have to depend on our executive director, Eduardo, to make those, and Donna to work with you all on that, our deputy port director to work with you all on those issues and come back to us with a plan on how this would directly benefit us and what our potential would be for benefits.
And we would like to do that.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Item number 8, consideration and action on assignment, negotiations, easements, subleases, and contracts in general. Item 1, Cielo Land and Cattle LP authority to negotiate.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Cielo Land and Cattle LP, under contract 3314, is requesting to amend their lease to make some changes in the rent, the length of the lease, and the terms. Mr. Renfro would probably can elaborate more on those terms.
We discussed their proposal in executive session 2 weeks ago. There will be further negotiations. There's a lot of work to do. But to summarize, the rent would go up from the existing lease. The term would be shortened. There would be some additional acreage. One of the things we'll have to look at is, does their proposal for the number of turbines maximize the use of the proposed acreage? That's something that will be evaluated. And there'll be a lot of work to do on the terms of the lease. And Cielo recognizes that this is just authority to formally start the discussions. However, they are hoping to pursue stimulus funds, and so that puts them on a relatively short timeline. So we would expect to report back to you. I think, frankly, Ms. Miller is here. She probably won't like to hear this. I think your meeting, the first August meeting, is too optimistic. I would hope maybe the second August meeting to have a report on where we are.
With this, are we still talking about the area along 5?
North side only.
North side only.
North side only. They've been informed that at this point, the consensus of the board seems to be not to proceed with negotiations with them for the south side. And they're comfortable with that.
Okay.
And that is not an area that interferes with the site that
The mitigation land.
they're mostly, because it looks and appears to be adjacent to, and then I can't tell with.
I don't believe it is, but I'll make those maps available to Cielo so they can verify that.
Okay.
If you look at this map here, for example, the area you're
Page
talking
8?
about, Cielo, is over here. So it's in this area. This would be page 8, yeah.
I don't believe it
So
is.
it's outside of what we're currently contemplating. I know that at one time, if you recall, when we were talking about potential sites, that was one of the potential sites. But now, with what Dr. Mosley's proposing in the prospectus, it's not in that area.
Okay.
Because they hope to use stimulus funds, they'll have to go through a full federal environmental review. And getting into the areas Dr. Mosley's talking about would compound those issues. So.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion?
Motion, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Aramla, second by Commissioner Lopez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries.
Item number 2, Cumberworth Investments, Inc., David C. Champion, MD, sublease.
Cumberworth Investments is requesting the board's consent to sublease their building only to David C. Champion, MD. This is the Prop 8 that was down the street here as you come in to the port. And they've moved their operation to this building. It's for a medical clinic, and I'm asking the board's consent to this sublease. Also, I would ask the board the authority to prepare an amendment to the purpose clause, to change the purpose clause to add medical clinic to this lease.
This is where they have the emergency, the little clinic
Yes, sir.
for injured workers.
It used to be in a trailer.
Yeah.
So
they leased the
yes,
building.
they needed more space, so this.
They're expanding it to be full medical, not just emergency. I mean, they want to reach out to the surrounding.
We got a motion by Commissioner Lopez. Do I have a second?
You got him.
Second by Commissioner Cowan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries.
Item number 3, Heavy Duty Equipment, Inc., subordination.
Heavy-duty equipment, under their contract 3590, is requesting the board's consent to subordinate in favor of IBC Bank for a loan that to purchase a 1994 Taylor TC 9507 or 950L. SIN 22639.
It's lead, it's a top loader.
Top loader. Okay. They did not do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lopez. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Reed.
Can I make a comment? I'm not sure I've seen that form. I was out of town last week. IBC's forms are generally acceptable. I just want to make sure I take a look at it. and make sure
Subject
it's-
to approval
By legal counsel.
Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries.
Item number 4, South Texas Railroad Construction Company, authority to negotiate.
South Texas Railroad Construction Contract 49 is due to expire the 1st of September, and they're asking for a new lease. So I'm asking the board to give me authority to negotiate a new lease for this company.
This is where, it's right here at on RL Road.
From you,
Yeah,
yes.
across on the curve there.
Right.
I'll motion it again.
We got a motion by Commissioner Lopez. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Cowan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries.
Item number 9, consideration and action on revised agreement with Texas Department of Transportation governing the overweight, oversized permit program.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we've had this issue on our plate for quite some time, and this has to do with the agreement that governs the overweight corridor program, the issuance, the sale of the permits, the whole certification of the program, more importantly, how we deal with the funds. TxDOT had approached us last year to renegotiate the agreement. The agreement essentially would spell out the terms of, again, we sell the permits, how much they keep, how much we keep, how it can be used. One of the big issues in the agreement was the essentially holding the district responsible for any shortfalls and any estimates necessary to maintain the designated corridor. And, you know, we always felt that was somewhat onerous and wanted it out. We decided that we would wait to go through the legislative route, put some things in the agreement that one would make it permanent, so there would always be that element of being able to recover revenue and addressing some of those issues that happened. So we came back, and again, it was time to discuss changing the agreement. We received the agreement actually last week. There were some things in it we were still uncomfortable with. This afternoon, Carol Davis, and I don't think Carol is here, but she is essentially with the contracts folks who's responsible for this program in Austin, was here, and we hammered out the language in the agreement. We think that we agreed on making all the changes that are necessary that comply with what is in the new bill. And essentially ensure the continuation of the program. And so while we don't have an agreement to show you, there is some element of urgency on their part to get this thing done. We did agree today that if they can make all these changes, and subject to final review by council, that we could live with it and we could recommend its approval. She didn't have a problem with it. She said that's fine. The only thing is that, you know, obviously we don't have a signed agreement in hand. That's one issue. So part of what kind of put in a great deal of urgency on that is that kind of going to get a little bit into the next item on the agenda, is that the TxDOT has a project Salud, that is going to be the road improvements on the corridor from about Minnesota, where Gordon's is, all the way to 802. And that project is set to be let next month. And in order to let that project, the district engineer has requested that we advance the money to TxDOT for the purposes of having the money in hand and being able to let that project. One of the issues that we had with that was that that is not the way the process works in the language of the current agreement. In the current agreement, it would simply say that we would reimburse TxDOT for those improvements as they're done. However, you know, that wouldn't work. So that urgency to try to get this agreement done and hammer out has a lot to do with how we're going to treat advancing the money to TxDOT so they can work on that element of the corridor that they want to start on next month. So we have we hammered out all the issues. I think, you know, pretty much that we're comfortable with Carol this afternoon. Debbie has made those changes in the language of the agreement. I think, you know, Daniel has at least cursorily reviewed it, but it needs to. We want to make sure that TxDOT in Austin is agreeable with that. And again, you know, like I said, there is some sense of urgency on their part now to get this thing done and signed and ready to go. I don't know if the best way to handle this would be to go ahead and have those changes made, have TxDOT or Department of Transportation in Austin review them, agree to them, send us a signed agreement that meets everything that we agreed to, have Daniel review it, make sure it's in compliance, and if they do all of that, that you authorize me to execute the agreement. Or wait to bring it back to you. I mean, I don't know how.
What are the changes exactly?
Well, the changes primarily have to do with is that we wanted to clearly take out any responsibility for the district to fund any shortfall, should any shortfall arise out of maintaining that. The others have to do with some clarification language. The bill that was drafted, you know, says now that the money, 85% of the funds, will be deposited to the state. Where the way it works right now is that all the money is here, we keep it all. And so consequently, we just give it to them when they need it. So we needed to address how that was going to work. 15% of what, of the money that's collected, 15% can be kept by us to administer the program. So that needed to be worked out. There was some language in there requiring us keeping a bond that would ensure the $500,000 bond that if there wasn't enough funds in the program for whatever maintenance needed to be done, that TxDOT could go against that bond and draw it down. Well, you know, it's not necessary to have a bond, and so the language that we have in there doesn't require us and force us to keep a bond in place, because again, we're not going to be responsible for any shortfall there may be in the funds. Trying to remember, I think those. Oh yeah, how the way the thing was, it required us to provide to TxDOT if something we should terminate this, all of the records associated with the program. Well, you know, there needs to be some provision in there that says that, you know, only those that may be subject to how long we have to retain them, as opposed to keeping all the records and turning them. But we have boxes and boxes of stuff to turn over to them. And I think there was one other minor provision.
There were a number of minor, it just needed tweaking, but the main two were that if there was a shortfall in the maintenance funds, that we were not obligated to make that up out of general funds, and we've clarified that. And the other was because there is a potential for actually improving the road out of these funds, that there would be a consultation, which we know as a practical matter will happen, but that the agreement confronted that before they undertook a big improvement, which would then require us to raise the fees, that we'd consult with them and have input.
Okay, so we're going to retain our 15%.
Yes.
The fees collected will be solely for the overweight corridor. Still,
that's correct.
That route, only on that designated route.
How long do we keep the money before we give? Is it a daily transfer? Is it a monthly transfer? Weekly transfer?
And I believe that's in the legislation.
Mr. Campiano, Mr. Jorge couldn't be here. I'm Arnold Cortez, air engineer. Just wanted to mention to the commissioners and chairman and Mr. Campiano, which he already knows, this is not our first project. This will be our fourth project with this overweight corridor, in which we've actually led the project. We've collected the money from the port. We've had an overlay job that we've done. We've done the concrete intersection up here in front, and we've replaced the two bridges. And with all that, we've also been audited, and all our audit reports have been coming out very good. So this is not the first time we're doing it. This is just continuing the same process. There is some issues that need to be on the agreement that y'all have come up with, but in essence, to get this project in motion, which actually this project and the internal port roads are the only two projects that we're going to let in the FAR district in the port of Brownsville here. We want to keep that momentum going, not lose that sense of job creation and all the other stuff that we need to get going. Of course, we're working with this is going to be the fourth project under the overweight corridor, so it's not new.
I have a question. The area that you're talking about doing between, I believe it's
802 and
313.
Yes.
That area there right now is not lumpy or bumpy. So I was wondering, this is an enhancement more than it is a maintenance item.
Could you step up here to the microphone, please?
This is what I'm.
Well, Commissioner Cowan, this is in addition to the roadway, we're going to replace it with a concrete, continue the concrete pavement that we've already done at the intersection of 802, which we actually did with that project. Replacing the deficient bridge that we have at 313, which it is deficient right now, based on the overweight. We have run our numbers, and it does need, it's in dire need of replacement, and to upgrade the safety on it. Actually make it wider, and by doing this concrete pavement, there'll be a lot less maintenance work, of course, on the road, a lot less overweight money spent on maintenance, and continue that process hopefully all the way as we can. I'm not sure if the law is going to change or not, but at least continue that type of process all the way up to entrance ramp up there by the expressway.
See, one of the things that I'm looking at too is that once we build the east loop, we're going to have a whole nother.
Actually, the dilemma we're in is that we can't finance a project by law. So once we let the project, we need to have those funds in place, and that's what the urgency was on this. To actually let it in, by law, we cannot finance that because of the overweight corridor.
One of the things, though, that kind of issue is moot somewhat because the law says maintenance and improvements.
Okay.
And so, and the East Loop thing, the only thing is that the language, it says in that, you know, what we do in the future with East Loop in terms of money is down the road. What this agreement does, it does say that, and the law, the statute says that the TxDOT that money will be used for maintenance and improvements to the corridor route. And so it's not going to be taken, you know, we're not depositing money in TxDOT's account that they're going to use for maintenance in Dallas or whatever. It is designated only for the route. It's within the language of the law. The difference is, he's right in that this isn't the first project we do. This is the first one we've asked for the whole money up front versus under the agreement it says that we will reimburse them for expenses. And so that's the urgency of trying to get it done so it can accommodate setting up the fund. We're no longer going to be tracking the 85% in our bank account. It will be going to TxDOT. They will use it as they see fit, as it relates to the law, when they see fit, and they can only use it on the corridor route.
I have a question, one more question. So it's clear to me, and Eddie had mentioned that, can the state come in and arbitrarily tell us we have to increase the permits?
No.
They cannot do that. Okay, so does the contract call for that? And so if they want an increase,
we put language in it that essentially gives us much more comfort level where, you know, we have to be consulted. If there's no funds, if there's not enough money to do a project, they simply don't do a project. But there may be a need at some point to have to look at whether through inflation or whatever adjusting those permits. But no, they can't come to us and say, like, give you an example. We have $5.8 million in the fund. They're going to need 4.8 roughly to do. So that leaves $1 million. So say they came back 2 years later and said, hey, you know, we got $5 million worth of improvements. There's only $2.5 million. You need to raise your fees to generate the additional. No, they can't do that. It won't work that way. Okay. It just would mean that, well, I guess we're going to have to wait, or they have to find some other means. Okay. And that was one of the concerns that we had in changing the language to ensure that. The other thing that it does incorporate is that, in getting back to East Loop, the bill that was passed says that the commission, in consultation with the port, can change a designated route, and that's what we're talking about, the East Loop. So that's also in the agreement, that before it almost implied that they could change the route, and they could change the corridor route and then just give us 60 days notice. And no, that's not the way it works. You know, you really have to come and consult with us before you change. So we took care of all of that in the language.
So to get the state the money they need, you need us to pass this subject to
review by legal counsel.
Is that what you're looking for?
Can I make a suggestion? Anytime you do a closing, basically we're doing a closing. We have an agreement that hasn't been signed. Okay, when the agreement is signed, you fund it. When they send you back a signed agreement, you give them a check. I mean, the things there, only thing it lacks is being signed. I mean, I would.
Can I ask a question following that up?
Yes.
What's the last day that you can get the money and be okay?
I don't know that. I know we need to have it sometime before August. The letting is, what you said earlier, the letting is on the 11th and 12th.
Here's the problem, and I agree with you in principle, is that according to Carol Davis, we may not have a signed agreement from TxDOT by the day that they let. So I have the same concern you have, and we talked about an alternate proposal, which is that the first item is to approve the agreement. And the agreement, Mr. Campanale is suggesting is that you approve it subject to review so that it conforms with the understanding we have today. Because the problem is that Ms. Davis, who's very competent, is in charge of this, has to get clearance from her lawyers on some of these changes. She doesn't think it'll be a problem, but she could not herself say this is a done deal. My suggestion with regard to the payment of the money is that if you would consider authorizing it to be conveyed to TxDOT in effect in trust, that you agree that you will use these funds solely for this project. And that if, for instance, the bids come back lower than the amount of money that we send them, they send the difference back, put it back in the fund.
Usually, and the bids have been coming in very low, like 15% under. That's why it's the urgency on our end to let it now.
You don't want to lose those bids. But if they got a bid at $3.8 million, they would agree. I assume that would be okay.
Yeah, but Mr. Renfro, I think what, in the life of the project, when we finish it and close off, that's when you would receive any extra monies that you'd be coming back at the closing of the audit.
Yeah, but that they would go back in the fund and not simply be absorbed in TxDOT's general funds or whatever, because
then they won't.
Because they are designated funds.
Yeah.
Now,
The way we set it up is, we did it both ways because it gives us an option. The concern we've always had is that, having the money in hand gave us the leverage necessary to negotiate the agreement to what we thought needed to be done. And so, but
I like Daniel's
that's fine.
Option of doing that.
Well, I agree, but if because one of the problems with legal departments and state agencies is that you'll get an attorney that suddenly decides that they want to change this language for whatever reason. And it wasn't what everybody had already agreed differently, but they decided arbitrarily they want to change that language. And then we've already authorized the money and we have no recourse. That's what.
I guess the only thing that I can assure the board is that the money is going to stay on the corridor. It has to by law.
I understand.
And it's not going to go anywhere. Now, I can't say we're not going to have any change orders. There's probably be some change orders that still have to go through the port.
About Murphy's Law.
Because when prior to Ariel, if there's concerns in that book, somehow there was a design error or something, and we need to change this, or it might be a positive or negative change order. And traditionally, traditionally we've had them that though. Now even more because contractors are real hungry now.
Yeah.
They're looking for work.
I think the issue is there's an urgency.
Well, I understand the urgency. I'm just trying to figure out how to protect ourselves.
And I think
that's what. I think what Daniel's talking about is that they put the money basically in a fund that cannot be released until the money, because we transfer to you, but y'all can't spend it until you all have.
If we let the project in August, it will be awarded at the end of August at the highway commissioners. And usually it takes, with this being a concrete job, they need to really order materials. It usually takes another month before we can have a pre-construction. So, and we have a clause in the contract, and I think probably the agreement will be done even before that, but we have a clause in the contract. We're actually not going to start that job until January of 2010 because we have a utility delay clause on the contract because utilities are not completed there. But yet, if we let it now, we can lock in those good prices.
That's the key.
That we're after.
I got you.
Mr. Cortez.
Mr. Cortez, I have two questions for you. One of them, the length of the project. How long is it?
Timeline?
The timeline.
The timeline, I think this is going to be a concrete pavement, so it's going to be done in puzzles and in phases.
But you wouldn't know the time frame.
I would have to say somewhere between 18 months.
That's one question. And the other one, as you are renovating this bridge project that you guys are going to do, are you going to divert traffic?
Yes, we're going to. Right now, we've got 2 lanes going both directions.
Yeah.
We're going to have a minimum of one lane going in both directions, or maybe 2 lanes in one direction and one lane in the other. I haven't looked at the traffic control plan,
Okay.
but
The reason I ask you, is it gonna remain a overweight corridor?
yes, it
or-
is. Yes, it is.
Because there's some permits that sometimes, if there's construction, they're void,
Right,
and
yes.
and we know the troopers are.
Yes, it's going to remain as an overweight corridor in there. It's not going to, we're not going to close it off.
Okay.
It's going to be still open to the overweight trucks and to the public.
And they're not asking for all the money. I mean, the second item, which is subsequent to this one, is just, to forward the amount of money that's necessary under Mario's request. That we wouldn't be sending all the money over there. We'd just be sending, 80% of it or whatever.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second, number 9.
The first item is to approve the
Item number-
agreement.
Item number 9,
Number 9,
approve the agreement subject to
legal counsel.
And
I think at this point, if we're going to fund the project, let's just wait to get the contract back and get able to change it. We'll just bring it back to you. If it looks like it's going to get prolonged and protracted, then maybe we'll do some others, but.
So what, do you want to table this?
I think if Carol can, succeed and get this thing back to us in 2 weeks, we'd have it on the next agenda. If you're going to act on item 10, I think that's okay.
It's item 10.
We haven't gone through that yet.
Well, that's the one where.
Well, the thing is that if we're going to do 9, 10 gives us a leverage on 9 being done in a timely fashion. I mean, that's as blunt as I could put it.
Well, I guess we could do 10, subject to the revisions or the provisions that Daniel had set forth.
I mean, you could take up 9 and 10 together if you wanted and have one motion, and it would be to either authorize execution of the agreement or to table action on the agreement, but to authorize payment of the funds with the stipulations discussed. If you're concerned about which comes first, you could have one motion.
I'm not concerned about what, I mean, we need to work on the agreement and then just bring it back to the board when it's ready, subject to what we discussed.
And I think your board director is recommending that you table item 9. Is that correct?
If we're going to come back with it, then just table it. You don't need to act on it now.
We don't need
All right.
9 is
So we just table it.
table 9.
Motion to table?
So move.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Okay, item 9 is tabled.
Item number 10, consideration and action on payment for Texas Department of Transportation approximately $5,886,322.56.
Now, on this one, I do not recommend that you pay $5,886,000. I would recommend that if we're going to do what Daniel suggested, is you just agree to Mr. Jorge's request for the $4,690,586.85 with the stipulation that it be used solely for the corridor project, and any funds that may not be used have to go back into the program.
I agree.
Is that language included in there, or will he have to modify it?
Well, I think the only thing-
I'll draft a cover letter that Mr. Campidano would sign.
Yeah.
I'll
But
make a motion if
don't
it's
approve the
okay.
whole $5.8 million. It's only $4.7 million, roughly.
With subject to.
All right, we got a motion by Commissioner Arambula, subject to the stipulations that we discussed.
He's buying rounds at Ice House.
But wait, there's more.
Well, it hadn't passed yet, Arnold. I wouldn't out that door yet.
$5 million.
Steve Miller used to say, take your money and run.
We got a motion by Commissioner Arambula, subject to those stipulations and that amount. We got a second by Commissioner Lopez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries. Now you can go celebrate.
Item number 11, consideration and action to award contract for road pavement improvement on the Fishing Harbor Road Rehabilitation Project to the lowest qualified bidder.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I mentioned these numbers to you earlier, but I've given you is basically the tabulation of the bids that were received on Monday for the Fishing Harbor Roads Rehabilitation Project. And as the agenda item indicates, there's funding of over $700,000. The low bid was $424,361.58. And what staff recommends is that the board award the contract to the G&T Paving in the amount of $424,361.58.
Those were the only two bids that came back?
Those were the only two bids that were received.
And why is there such a large discrepancy?
Well, that's what Arnold was saying right now, because there's some of these bidders are very, very hungry to get the work.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And
This is tight.
I anticipated this spread. I did not anticipate that we would only have two. I expected about 8.
Ariel, I got two questions. What were the extra $100,000 we put into this? Staff has had some bid items that will increase the estimate approximately $100,000.
Yes.
And the second question is,
I'm sure, I'm sorry, can you?
what was the extra $100,000 for? That was my first question. And the second question, no, we'll answer
I'll
it.
explain that in a minute.
Okay, the second question has to do with, I don't know if this is a typo. You say here the bids will be received and open on Monday, July 13th. But what you sent out was that they would be opened on Thursday, July 9th.
Well, let me address the second question.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, the second question first. We were scheduled to open bids on Thursday, June the 9th, but because of precisely the addition of the extra work that we added to the project, some of the bidders, well, one of the bidders actually indicated that he would not be able to submit the bid on the 9th. So what we did is we issued an addendum to extend the bid opening date to Monday, and that's in keeping with purchasing procedures. We checked that with our finance director, and that was perfectly fine. So we opened the bids on Monday. Now, what the extra $100,000 is one of the things that the highway department does that I did not see on the plans was the provision of strengthening the driveways up to the right-of-way line. And basically, one of the things the main thing that the plans addressed was just overlay of the roads, but it didn't address that. In fact, it didn't address some of the curb and gutter that was broken. Now, if you look at the detailed bid tabulation, which is the second page, what I did is I added those 3 bid items, which you see in the second table. The first table is the bid items that were provided to us by the consultant. And the other 3 bid items are items that we added as an initiative of the port to provide for strengthening of those driveways and to also strengthen some of the weak areas that needed patching, and to replace some of the curb and gutter that we have that was damaged, that was not indicated or reflected in the construction plans from the consultant. So what we have. What we actually bid, I had ballparked it at $100,000 when I prepared the agenda item. What we got was about $124,000, and then that's basically what will cover what we will be doing out at the site.
I really had a third question I forgot to ask. Is prior to prior to the commencement of the work, we will notify the tenants in the area that it's going to start on such and such date so they can plan.
Well, not only that, we held a meeting yesterday with the chairman. Is he the chairman?
He's the president.
The president of the Fishing Harbor Association.
It was today.
Oh man, my days are going super quick with this morning.
Yes, we met. We met with him. Yeah, we met with him basically just to consult with him on, his ideas of what was the best way to communicate this to all the membership. We're going to send out notices anyway, and just to let them know what we were doing. They've got a meeting, I think, on the 29th of July, but even before that, we'll be sending out notices to all the leasees, advising them that we're going to be doing road repairs, because it's important that we coordinate it. with them just as much as they coordinate with us. What we can't afford is to have vehicles parked on the side of the road the day the equipment shows up and things of that nature. So we have to coordinate it with them.
And additionally, port staff has already initiated putting weed killer on the areas where we have weeds growing through the pavement so that those can be eliminated prior to the contractor coming in. That way we can identify exactly where those areas are right now before the contractor comes in and cleans them out. So we're addressing that.
How long is the work going to take?
The work, well, we're going to give the contractor 10 days from today to execute all the documents. He needs to bring in his performance and payment bonds. He needs to bring in his certification of insurance, all the documents that are required.
He didn't tell you though.
I think he's going to do it fairly quickly because he was ready to start tomorrow.
Did he give you an estimated
Time?
No. You mean a construction time?
Yeah.
He hasn't given one to me. My projection is approximately 2 months.
2 months.
But he has not given us. We are going to ask him to give us a schedule. In fact, we're going to break it down because we want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what's going on, and we want to minimize the impact. And there will be an impact because of the nature of the project.
There'll be some disruption.
But yeah, there will be some disruption, but our intent is to minimize it.
I think the ones that we do need to let know are the ones that do subcontracting for AMPHILs, because they will affect those.
Yeah, well, everybody's going to get a written notice, and then we'll go out there and meet with them as well.
Can I ask a question? Now that we're saving so much money on the paving of the roads, do you think we can
Get a dividend?
No. Can we address some more, can we do some additional repairs to the docks that need to be done, the maintenance?
I will tell you that we have a crew out there that's doing nothing but dock repairs. And so the other thing I need to tell you is that the funds for these repairs are coming not out of the general fund. They're going to come out of the fund that we have for harbor improvements. So two is that it'll leave more money available for other improvements than what we had anticipated. But we've got two of the people that we hired, if you remember, the maintenance was to have a crew that was going to be out there doing nothing but doing dock repairs, and that crew's already there doing that.
Right.
The thing, if they're over here, somebody wants them over here. If they're over here, somebody wants them over there. So we're just taking it, but that's where they're doing the work.
They're on a daily basis.
What I would like to do at some point is just have an idea what the sequence of the jobs are going to be on the repairs to the docks that over there. Just so that when I get a call from a constituent, I know what to tell them.
What we'll do at the next report, we'll include the dock repairs in the monthly report to show you what we've done and what Joe proposes to do in the next 2-3 months.
Okay.
So you'll know.
Oh, great.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Lopez. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Cowan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item carries.
Item number 12, adjourn into executive session.
Do we have anything to discuss? All right, nothing to discuss.
Item 13, there's no action. Item 14.
Any comments? Do we have somebody?
Hector?
Hector?
Anything to say, Hector?
Comment?
The last one left.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Got it.
All those in favor? All right, we're hereby adjourned.
Oh, man. Oh, you can put it.